Have you ever found yourself in that curious space where you've achieved so much? Perhaps you've hit those career milestones, built a wonderful family, maybe even acquired some of the things you once really chased, only to discover there's this subtle, kind of persistent emptiness. Like
Oh,
you've summited a peak, looked out at the view and thought, is this really all there is?
that feeling, yeah. That sense of a missing piece, despite all the outward success, that's precisely the starting point for our deep dive today.
Okay.
We're going to explore a really profound concept that David Brooks, the insightful social commentator, unpacks in his book, The Second Mountain. It's really about what happens after you've navigated and often, conquered that terrain of traditional success.
Exactly. Brooks calls that initial phase of life the first mountain. Think of it as the climb driven by, well, individual ambition, by the pursuit of what society often defines as personal happiness.
Right, the standard checklist.
Yeah, it's about building your resume, carving out your identity, striving for individual achievement, and often, yeah, securing material comfort. And let's be clear, this isn't inherently bad. Many of us, myself included, spend a good chunk of our lives on this ascent.
Oh, absolutely.
But like you said, it can ultimately leave a significant void, a sort of success fatigue, maybe.
Indeed. The first mountain is typically characterized by a very self-focused lens. Its pursuit is often fueled by ego-driven desires, a need for external validation, and a relatively narrow definition of personal success that really centers on me and my achievements.
Hmm.
The crucial turning point for many, it seems, is the realization that this path, while often productive and maybe even necessary for personal development, it just doesn't deliver ultimate lasting fulfillment. It's often built on a fragile foundation.
So if the first mountain is about building my kingdom, let's say, the second mountain isn't about tearing all that down.
No, not at all.
It's more of a natural evolution, though often much harder, I imagine, and ultimately maybe far more fulfilling. It's a profound shift from that self-centered life to one defined by deep, meaningful, and outward-looking commitments. It's about transforming the me into we.
Absolutely. It's a move toward a different kind of joy altogether. One not found in accumulation or individual glory, but really in service, profound connection, and a sense of shared purpose.
Okay.
So our mission today is to thoroughly unpack this transformative journey. We'll be drawing insights from a really rich stack of sources spanning ancient philosophical texts all the way to modern psychological research to truly understand the four great commitments that define this meaningful second mountain life:
The
to
term.
a spouse and family, to a vocation, to a philosophy or faith, and finally to a community.
Okay, let's unpack this. Get ready, everyone listening, to explore how stepping onto this second, perhaps steeper path can radically redefine what true and lasting fulfillment really means for you. So as we begin our climb, we first have to really understand the terrain of that first mountain. What is it about this initial quest for, let's call it self-centered happiness, that makes it so alluring, so undeniably attractive, yet at the same time, so inherently fragile?
Well, its allure lies in its immediate gratification, right? And its promise of recognition, comfort, control, things our ego, deeply craves.
Mm-hmm.
But its fragility, that's where the deeper insights lie, I think. It stems from its reliance on external factors and, critically, a fundamental misunderstanding of the self.
Okay.
Eckhart Tolle, in A New Earth, highlights resentment as a prime example of this ego's, insidious grip. He describes it as an emotion that accompanies complaining and the mental labeling of people, literally pouring energy into the ego.
How so?
Well, we resent others' perceived greed or their dishonesty or what they did or didn't do. The ego absolutely loves this because instead of simply overlooking unconsciousness in others, we make it their definitive identity. We build a whole story around it.
That's a powerful observation. And Tolle points out that sometimes the fault we perceive isn't even truly there. It could just be a projection from a mind conditioned to see enemies everywhere.
Exactly.
But even if the fault is genuinely present, by focusing on it, by feeding that resentment, we actually amplify it within ourselves. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Tolle writes that what you react to in another, you strengthen in yourself.
Think about that.
Yeah. It's a powerful self-reinforcing feedback loop, isn't it? It keeps us firmly stuck in that self-centered mindset, constantly seeing the world as a source of grievance, a reason to complain.
Precisely. Tolle further expands on this by exploring the illusory nature of my life, calling it a limited perspective created by thought. He posits this really radical idea: you and life are not two, but one. This suggests that the self-centered view, this whole notion of my own separate life, is just an artificial separation from a larger interconnected reality. When we operate solely from this my own life perspective, we are, well, by definition, operating from a limited and ultimately unsustainable foundation that will always feel incomplete somehow.
That deep sense of fundamental impermanence also resonates profoundly with ancient wisdom, doesn't it? Like the first noble truth of Buddhism, which Stephen Prothero discusses.
Yes, in God is not one.
Right. It states unequivocally that life is suffering, dukkha, because nothing is permanent, nothing lasts. Happiness, in this view, is fleeting, and everything is constantly changing.
Hmm.
Suffering, then, isn't just external pain. It primarily arises from our grasping, our desperate desire for things to be as we imagine them to be, rather than accepting this constant, inevitable flux.
Yeah, that clinging.
So if our happiness is tied to things that are by their very nature impermanent, a new car, a perfect relationship, even our own youth, it's bound to be inherently fragile and lead to disappointment, right?
Indeed. Our deep attachment to what we imagine to be unchanging, whether it's our favorite coffee shop staying exactly the same, or a pristine new possession, or even a spouse whose behavior we expect to remain constant. This grasping inevitably leads to suffering when reality, inevitably shifts.
Mm.
This clinging is directly linked to what Michael A. Singer in The Untethered Soul and Eckhart Tolle again in The Power of Now both describe as that incessant voice in your head.
Oh, that voice. We all know that voice. Sometimes mine sounds like a particularly critical Twitter feed running constantly in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Singer humorously asks, if he's the one who's talking and he's the one who's listening, he obviously knows what's going to be said before he says it. So what's the point?
It's a great question.
It's just a relentless stream, often negative, imagining things going wrong, what Tolle calls worry. They both powerfully suggest that this inner voice acts as our own worst enemy, preventing genuine presence and peace. It's constantly interpreting the present through the distorting lens of past experiences and future anxieties, effectively keeping us from ever fully experiencing this moment.
And this internal turmoil is often compounded by deeper internal obstacles that actively prevent us from shifting off that first mountain. Brené Brown, in Daring Greatly, she defines shame as an intensely painful experience. She notes that our brain chemistry reinforces the importance of social acceptance, so social rejection and disconnection literally register in our brains like physical pain.
Wow, like actual pain.
Yes. And shame, she says, hates having words wrapped around it and being spoken. This means it thrives in silence and secrecy, leading to isolation and actively preventing the vulnerability that is absolutely necessary for true connection. If you can't be vulnerable, you really can't commit fully to others, can you?
That's a truly powerful insight. Brown gives poignant examples like infertility or hidden family secrets as profound sources of shame, where the fear of judgment just keeps us isolated and unable to move forward into deeper, more connected relationships.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to commit wholeheartedly to others or even to a purpose beyond ourselves when we're constantly spending energy hiding so much of our true selves. This resonates a lot with what C.S. Lewis says about pride, actually.
Yes, exactly. Where shame drives isolation through fear of judgment, pride creates enmity and prevents connection. Lewis argues this with stark clarity in Mere Christianity. He calls pride the chief cause of misery in every nation and every family since the world began.
Strong words.
Very. Pride, he explains, prevents knowing God, or for that matter, knowing anything above you, because a proud man is always looking down on others. If you're perpetually looking down, you are inherently unable to perceive or even acknowledge something that is above you. It effectively cuts you off from higher perspectives, from humility, and from true spiritual connection. It builds an internal barrier to growth.
That's such a clear, almost visual image of self-imprisonment, isn't it? Always looking down. And it really sets the stage for what Charles Taylor describes as the modern buffered self in our secular age. That adds another fascinating layer to this internal detachment. How does Taylor's idea of the buffered self kind of reinforce this obstacle to the second mountain?
Well, Taylor's buffered self describes the modern individual as having this clear, almost impenetrable boundary between their internal self and the external world.
Okay, like a wall.
Sorta. In this state, meaning and purpose withdraw primarily into the individual's inner experience, leading to a sense of disengagement from the world and from others. It's a very self-sufficient, almost hermetically sealed existence. This stands in stark contrast to the historical porous self, which was open and vulnerable to the world, encountering meaning through direct connection and interaction. The first mountain, by its very nature, encourages this buffered, self-sufficient state, making it harder to open up to the vulnerability required for genuine commitment later on.
So this buffered self inherently resists discomfort, resists the very purification needed for deeper growth. It makes me think of St. John of the Cross here. In Dark Night of the Soul, he vividly describes this resistance.
Yes, he does.
He talks about people finding it irksome when they are commanded to do that wherein they take no pleasure, referring spiritual sweetness and consolation over the trials of perfection. This aversion to discomfort, this clinging to what feels good, to the familiar, actively prevents the radical inner work required to truly move to the second mountain.
Exactly. They desire to go about spiritual matters with complete freedom and according to their own will, which fundamentally creates a repugnance to the narrow way that Christ describes as the way of life.
Right.
It's a profound spiritual resistance to the necessary breaking down of the ego. It's the ego's preference for comfort over growth, for familiar pleasures over transformative challenges.
So we've painted a pretty vivid picture of the first mountain, a landscape of self-focused ambition where the ego often runs rampant, creating illusions of separation and nurturing a fragility that ultimately keeps us from deeper meaning and lasting fulfillment. But for someone listening right now who might be feeling that void, what does that first step of turning look like? Is it a sudden, dramatic epiphany or something more gradual and internal? How do we actually turn from that path towards that shift in consciousness that calls us to deeper commitment?
That's an excellent question, and yeah, it's rarely a single definitive moment. This shift often begins with a profound, sometimes disorienting, realization of the inherent limitations of self-centeredness, a moment when the illusion of the first mountain starts to crack. We see this powerfully in Siddhartha's journey, recounted beautifully in 12 major world religions. He grew up in a palace, completely shielded from suffering, never experiencing old age, sickness, or death until he encountered them directly in the world outside his gilded cage.
Right, the famous four sights.
Exactly. This exposure deeply dismayed him. Yet, in the midst of his distress, he was profoundly inspired by the unexpected contentment of an ascetic, a renunciant he saw, who practiced extreme self-discipline.
Right. It was this encounter with both suffering and this unexpected inner peace that served as his personal turning point. It led Siddhartha to famously sneak away from the palace, didn't he? Renouncing his possessions and power, leaving his family behind to pursue a spiritual path.
He did. He spent years living like an ascetic, begging and practicing rigorous yoga, hoping to overcome the cycle of life and death through intentional deprivation.
But that didn't work either, did it?
No. As we know, this extreme asceticism only left him weak and emaciated, not enlightened. So in a final act of profound turning, he abandoned that extreme path and turned to deep meditation, vowing not to stand until he discovered the truth. This was a truly radical departure from his first mountain comforts and expectations, a complete redirection of his life's purpose.
Absolutely. It's a quintessential example of someone discovering that their initial conventional approach to finding meaning was just fundamentally insufficient. James Baldwin, in The Fire Next Time, provides another potent illustration, though in a very different context. He became a preacher initially to escape what he called a sordid life, and notably to kind of best his father, to prove something.
Right, complex motivation.
Yeah. He pursued a path that, on the surface, looked like a commitment to faith and service. Yet he ultimately came to this heartbreaking realization. He said he had immobilized myself and had escaped from nothing, whatever.
Wow, that's stark.
His experience was deeply, painfully disillusioning. He candidly admits he found no love in the church, but instead a mask for hatred and self-hatred and despair. He even felt he was committing a crime, telling children to reconcile to misery that he himself couldn't accept. This reveals such a powerful personal discovery of the falsity of a supposed commitment that was actually profoundly self-serving and ego-driven. It highlights that even deeply spiritual or religious paths can be co-opted by that first mountain mindset if they're not rooted in true, selfless intention. He realized, as he put it, the blood of the Lamb had not cleansed me, that his outward actions hadn't transformed his inward state at all.
These turning points, whether they're sudden like Siddhartha's shift or gradual like Baldwin's dawning realization, they underscore the absolute necessity of a profound transformation, not just a superficial adjustment.
Right.
C.S. Lewis, back in Mere Christianity, uses that vivid agricultural analogy. Trying to be good while keeping personal happiness as the ultimate aim is like expecting a thistle to miraculously produce figs. It's fundamentally impossible.
Yeah, you can't just wish it.
Exactly. The change, he insists, must go deeper than the surface. I must be plowed up and resown. This isn't about making minor improvements. It emphasizes the radical inner work required, a complete reorientation of one's entire inner landscape, a deep tilling of the soil of the soul.
That's a truly visceral image being plowed up and resown. It speaks to a fundamental restructuring, not just a mere tweak. And this deep inner change inevitably requires a radical abandonment of self-will, doesn't it?
It seems so. The Theologia Germanica, that anonymous 14th century mystical text, states this with absolute clarity,
Yeah.
that all will apart from God's will, that is, all self-will, is sin.
Wow, sin. That's strong.
It is. It instructs one to quit all self and me and mine and we and ours. True love, in this tradition, seeks goodness for goodness' sake, not for personal gain or reward, not for egoic satisfaction. This is presented as a foundational principle for genuinely moving beyond the first mountain.
And if we don't make this fundamental shift, if we cling to that buffered self and that self-will, we risk ending up in what Teilhard de Chardin, in The Phenomenon of Man, calls a blind alley of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
He warns specifically against seeking fulfillment by being more alone so as to increase one's being. He paints a rather stark picture, describing a humanity that would culminate in a dust of active, dissociated particles if this path were pursued to its extreme, a fragmented, isolated existence. He starkly contrasts this with a combined movement towards unity, which he sees as the true direction of evolution.
So isolation isn't just lonely. It's actually a spiritual and evolutionary dead end, according to him. This connects beautifully with Ken Wilber's integral vision, which describes human evolution as this unfolding process moving from body to mind to spirit, and crucially from egocentric to ethnocentric to world-centric stages of care and consciousness.
Okay, explain those stages a bit.
Well, egocentric is just focused on the self.
Yeah.
Ethnocentric expands care to one's group, tribe, or nation. But world-centric embraces care for all humanity, all beings.
I see.
The second mountain, then, can be framed as precisely this movement evolving into these higher, wider potentials, a profound spiritual and relational evolution that expands our very sense of self beyond the individual me.
Exactly. The journey of the second mountain is fundamentally about expanding our circle of care and consciousness, moving beyond mere self-preservation and individual gratification to embrace a more collective, interconnected, and ultimately more meaningful existence. It's an evolution not just of the individual, perhaps, but also of consciousness itself, leading us towards those deeper commitments.
That brings us right to the very heart of the second mountain. The four great commitments that David Brooks identifies as the bedrock of a life of deeper purpose.
Okay, let's get into them. The first, and for many, maybe the most personal and transformative, is the commitment to a spouse and family. What's truly fascinating here is how Joseph Campbell describes the almost mystical bond of meeting a spouse.
Campbell articulates this beautifully in The Power of Myth. He says, it's almost as though the future life that you're going to have with that person has already told you, this is the one whom you will have that life with.
Like destiny.
Maybe. It isn't just about rational choice or superficial attraction. It suggests an intuitive, profound, almost predestined commitment, a deep recognition of a shared destiny that transcends immediate circumstances. It implies that a part of us already knows the profound journey we are meant to undertake with this individual. It's a fundamental recognition of a deep, almost mystical bond that draws individuals together.
And Brené Brown, again in Daring Greatly, speaks to the raw, almost terrifying vulnerability that this kind of love for family brings.
Oh, yes.
She shares how she feels most vulnerable when she thinks about how much I love my kids and Steve and how my life would be over if something happened to them. This profound love for family exposes us to our deepest fears, the fear of loss, of pain, of being utterly undone.
It's the price of deep connection.
But paradoxically, it's precisely this vulnerability that also unlocks immense joy and meaning. It's in that space of open-heartedness, of allowing ourselves to be truly seen and deeply connected, that the deepest, most resilient commitments are forged.
This depth of commitment, however, can also introduce complexities and, at times, incredibly difficult choices. The Quran, for instance, offers a really powerful instruction. Upon man, we enjoin charity towards father and mother, and yet, should they press you to associate with me that of which you have no knowledge, do not obey them. To me is your return.
So a hierarchy of loyalties.
Exactly. This passage illustrates a profound hierarchy of commitment, where spiritual or philosophical commitment can sometimes supersede even deeply ingrained familial bonds. It acknowledges that true devotion might at times require profound choices when core allegiances conflict, even within that sacred sphere of family.
That's a powerful nuance, the idea that some commitments can transcend others, even those as fundamental as family. And we see a different kind of radical choice, though similar maybe in spirit, in Siddhartha's path,
Yes, leaving his family.
which, as we discussed, involved leaving his family behind to pursue enlightenment. This serves as a striking counterpoint, showing that personal spiritual commitment can sometimes involve a radical detachment from conventional familial roles, highlighting the diverse and sometimes challenging paths to the second mountain. It's not always about integrating, but sometimes about a focused renunciation for a higher aim.
And these choices, whether in marriage or family, they're rarely similar made just once, are they? C.S. Lewis in The Great Divorce offers a metaphor that applies perfectly here. Every road, after a few miles, forks into two, and each of those into two again, and at each fork you must make a decision.
Life is choices.
It is, and this applies directly to the continuous, evolving commitment within marriage and family, where choices might mean leaving behind parts of oneself, certain expectations, or even previous dreams. It's a continuous process of discernment, negotiation, and recommitment, not a one-time event you simply check off a list.
Absolutely. It's not always about an easy blending, but often about making hard choices that prune away what doesn't serve the deeper commitment, allowing the central relationship to flourish. Now, what about the second great commitment Brooks identifies, to a vocation? This clearly goes beyond just having a job, right? It's about finding purpose and a path to mastery.
Indeed, it goes far beyond just clocking in and out. Miyamoto Musashi, the celebrated samurai swordsman and philosopher, offered a perspective in The Complete Musashi that expands this idea way beyond the battlefield.
Interesting. How so?
He realized that the various arts had much in common in terms of the search for perfection. He came to understand that arts and occupations were ways in their own right, by no means inferior to the way of the warrior.
So, respect for all paths.
Yes, this radical rejection of exclusivity or arrogance towards other professions redefines vocation, not just as a job, a means to an end, but as a dedicated path to mastery, contribution, and profound engagement in any field. It's really about the spirit with which you approach your work.
So it's not the specific title or prestige of the work, but the depth of engagement and the internal journey towards excellence. And this engagement, it needs to be authentic, right? Aligned with one's true self. Benjamin Hoff, in The Tao of Pooh, emphasizes listening to one's inner nature, which, he says, cannot be fooled, unlike the often distracted or misguided brain. He observes that many people do not look at it or listen to it, and consequently do not understand themselves very much, making them easily influenced by others. Finding a true vocation, one aligned with your genuine self, absolutely requires this deep introspection and self-trust.
That inner compass is so crucial for navigating the noise of external expectations. But authenticity in vocation, particularly maybe in creative endeavors, demands tremendous courage. Rolla May, in The Courage to Create, states that authentic creativity takes so much courage, an active battle with the gods is occurring.
Wow, battle with the gods.
Yeah, he observes that while talent is plentiful, passion or commitment is often sorely lacking in creative pursuits. This highlights that true vocation demands deep emotional investment, resilience, and a willingness to confront inner and outer resistance. It's not just about having skill, it's about a fierce, unwavering dedication to the work itself.
That's such an important distinction. Talent might get you started, but passion, commitment, courage, that's what keeps you going, what allows you to truly develop a craft. We see a beautiful embodiment of this in the excerpts from An Everlasting Meal.
Ah, yes, Tamar Adler.
Right. The book celebrates the art of cooking. Adler describes the meticulous details of making aioli by hand, tasting for subtle adjustments, really understanding the profound nature of each ingredient. This isn't just a recipe, it's presented as an act of grace and presence within one's work. It's about finding joy and meaning in the process itself rather than simply the outcome, elevating it to a true second mountain vocation. The love for the craft, the attention to detail, transforms the mundane into something really meaningful.
This dedication to craft, whether it's culinary or something else entirely, reflects a deep engagement that goes beyond mere task completion to a state of profound presence. And to cultivate this kind of vocational clarity, self-reflection is absolutely paramount.
How do we do that practically?
Well, Julia Cameron, in the Artist's Way workbook, offers practical tools like morning pages, that daily practice of stream of consciousness writing, and artist's dates, dedicated time alone for creative exploration.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, they described as tools to help individuals surrender to being more truly ourselves, emphasizing unique individuality. These practices help individuals listen to their inner wisdom and align with their authentic paths, whether that means staying married, getting divorced, or pursuing a completely different calling. They're crucial, it seems, for discovering and nurturing a true vocation.
So vocation isn't just about what you do, but how deeply and authentically you engage with your true self in the doing. It's a continuous journey of self-discovery and committed action. Now, let's move to the third great commitment, to a philosophy or faith. This is often where we seek to understand our place in the cosmos, right? To connect with something larger than ourselves, to find ultimate meaning.
This commitment indeed delves into profound paths to transcendence and oneness. Eric Fromm, in The Art of Loving, makes a really crucial distinction here. He argues that the love of God is neither the knowledge of God in thought nor the thought of one's love of God, but the act of experiencing the oneness with God.
Experience over intellect.
Exactly. He suggests that intellectual thought inevitably gets caught in the paradox of conceptualizing the divine, but direct lived experience transcends it. This emphasizes an embodied commitment over mere intellectual assent. It's about direct, felt experience, not just belief or doctrine.
That's a truly crucial distinction, the difference between knowing about God and truly experiencing oneness with the divine. Eckhart Tolle, he connects this profound experience to something as fundamental as deep, dreamless sleep,
In a new earth.
suggesting it's a return to the unmanifested source of all life, an inherent, almost biological connection to a deeper reality. And in The Power of Now, he further links a permanent conscious connectedness with the inner body to being forever one with God, and even attracting higher vibrational circumstances, again pointing to an experiential, embodied spiritual path.
And this path, across different traditions, often involves progressive stages of realization. The Bhagavad Gita, for instance, describes Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead as progressive stages of transcendental realization.
Can you break those down quickly?
Sure. Brahman represents the impersonal, all-pervasive aspect of the divine, kind of a formless energy. Paramatma refers to the localized supersoul, sensing God as residing within the heart of every living being. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate personal and relational understanding of the divine, a full and intimate connection.
Okay.
The text warns that one runs the risk of falling down if they cannot elevate beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman, emphasizing the need for continued deepening spiritual growth, a journey from abstraction to intimate personal connection.
I can see how that would be a profound challenge, that constant striving for deeper understanding and experience. Aldous Huxley, in The Perennial Philosophy, offers a practical stopping practice. It involves discarding all kinds of ideation, letting go of thoughts, concepts, judgments. The mind is encouraged to become like a mirror, reflecting things but not judging them or retaining them. The ultimate goal is to realize the pure, undifferentiated essence of mind itself, highlighting a path to inner peace through radical non-attachment and clarity.
These practices speak to a rigor of spiritual purification that often requires immense discipline. Siddhartha's journey, which we touched upon earlier, powerfully culminates in such a transformation, doesn't it?
Yes, after the asceticism failed.
Right. After years of extreme asceticism left him weak and desperate, he turned to sustained meditation, famously vowing not to stand until he discovered the truth of existence. After 49 days, a period of profound inner struggle and contemplation, he achieved enlightenment, becoming the Buddha. Hermann Hesse, in his novel Siddhartha, describes this profound moment by the rushing river, where the old, tired, desperate Siddhartha had drowned today, symbolizing a deep, personal, spiritual death and rebirth, a complete shedding of the former self for a new, awakened consciousness.
That's a complete surrender and rebirth, a true plowing up and re-sowing of the self. Catherine of Siena, she uses a striking metaphor too, doesn't she?
Yes, the silkworm in the top 7 Catholic classics, which has of necessity to die for its transformation to a moth. She explains that true union with God's will, the ultimate spiritual commitment, requires continuing living this present life and yet to die of our own free will.
Harder than physical death.
That's what she argues, yes, but it yields greater reward. She identifies self-love, self-esteem, censoriousness, lack of charity as little worms that relentlessly gnaw at virtues, emphasizing an arduous, continuous self-transformation where even subtle imperfections and egoic attachments must be consciously rooted out.
And this spiritual purification, as St. John of the Cross warns in Dark Night of the Soul, it's not always gentle. In fact, it is often profoundly painful.
Absolutely not gentle. He details the intense yearnings for God, that can feel like a living thirst that kills, and the anguished thoughts that the soul has lost God, which he describes as the greatest suffering in this purifying faith.
The dark night.
Yes, it's a period of spiritual desolation, a purging of attachments and illusions where one feels utterly abandoned by God. Yet he presents this as a necessary and ultimately beneficial process, a crucible that leads to deeper faith and union, a true dark night that ultimately yields a profound dawn.
It sounds incredibly challenging, pushing through profound suffering to reach a higher state of commitment. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in The Cost of Discipleship, he emphasizes real obedience to Christ when he calls us to follow him as the genuine way to overcome mere legalism, just following rules. He warns against unevangelical interpretation that uses abstract principles of grace to avoid genuine discipleship, which requires concrete, often sacrificial action. This underscores that a committed faith isn't passive. It's an active, living response, a continuous following of a demanding path, rather than simply intellectual agreement or just going through the motions of ritualistic practice.
This active obedience also applies to specific spiritual disciplines that transform the inner life. The Way of a Pilgrim, that classic Russian Orthodox text, describes the practice of unceasing prayer, specifically the Jesus Prayer.
How does that work?
Well, initially one recites the name of Jesus Christ with conscious effort, focusing the mind. With consistent practice, the tongue and lips become accustomed, the mind starts listening, and eventually the prayer descends into the heart.
Into the heart.
Yes, the heart then spontaneously pours itself out to God in an unceasing stream of tenderness, creating a profound interconnection and a purification from past sins, allowing one to live in a continuous state of prayer and communion.
And similar rigorous body-mind integrated practices exist in other traditions too, right? Like in yoga.
Definitely. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali list moral restraints, known as yamas, as absolutely fundamental for a yogin. These include nonviolence, truthfulness, satyalaceta, non-stealing, asteya, celibacy or a right use of energy, brahmacharya, and non-possessiveness, aparigraha.
And these aren't just like suggestions, they're crucial for purification.
You're right, they are far more than just ethical guidelines. The yamas are considered foundational for purifying what's called the subtle body, our energy systems and mental patterning. Patanjali explains that these are not mastered instantly, but gradually cultivated through consistent practice and intention.
So, like ahimsa, non-violence.
Right, it extends beyond physical harm to thoughts and words. By rigorously adhering to these yamas, a yaman actively cleanses their internal landscape of egoic tendencies, attachments, and negative impulses. This in turn prepares the mind for deeper meditation, and ultimately for achieving liberation and union with the divine. They are essential internal commitments that directly enable the ascent of the second mountain.
However, it's really essential to acknowledge that the path of faith isn't without its challenges and nuances, and it can be profoundly distorted sometimes. James Baldwin, again in The Fire Next Time, offers a pretty harsh critique of organized religion based on his own experience.
Yes, very critical.
He describes his time in the church as having no love. It was a mask for hatred and self-hatred and despair. He doesn't pull any punches, highlighting what he saw as the unmitigated arrogance and cruelty of Christianity when it became intertwined with power, justifying conquest and liberating the infidels through violence. This serves as such a critical lens on how faith, when disconnected from true love, humility, and service, can become a tool for ego, division, and even oppression.
Baldwin's powerful words remind us that any path, if not genuinely aligned with self-transcendence, can be co-opted by the first mountain's egoic impulses. Pema Chodron, in When Things Fall Apart, offers a different kind of approach, describing the middle way.
The middle way.
She calls it tough going because it goes against the grain of an ancient neurotic pattern that we all share. It's about cultivating radical acceptance and non-judgment. She encourages awakening the bravery that exists in everyone by not judging or grasping at thoughts, allowing them to come and go as if touching a pebble with a feather, leading to a fresh, unbiased state of being.
That sounds peaceful.
It offers a balanced, practical, and compassionate approach to inner commitment, focusing on present moment awareness and non-reactivity.
This middle way offers a grounded, pragmatic approach to navigating life's challenges without clinging to extremes. And finally, on the interplay of science and faith, C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity offers an insightful distinction.
Yes.
He carefully separates science's role of observing how things behave from fundamental questions like, why is there a universe? Or, has it any meaning? which, he argues, are simply not scientific questions. He makes a compelling personal argument, noting that his own argument against God collapsed when he realized he had an inherent, undeniable idea of just and unjust that science couldn't explain. This suggested that atheism, for him, was too simple if it denied such an innate moral sense.
Interesting point.
It invites reflection on how scientific and faith-based inquiries, while distinct in their methodologies, can both contribute to a comprehensive, multifaceted understanding of existence and meaning.
Indeed, there are different lenses, aren't they? Each offering unique insights into the nature of reality.
So we've explored the deeply personal and often internal commitments that define the second mountain. Now, let's widen our lens to the fourth and final great commitment to a community. This is where our personal transformation extends outward into the world, where the we truly manifests.
This commitment marks a profound, active shift from self-interest to interdependence and mutual flourishing. Robin Wall Kimmerer, in Braiding Sweetgrass, uses the humble plantain as a truly beautiful metaphor for becoming a good neighbor within a community.
The plantain,
Yeah.
the weed.
Yeah. She notes it's an immigrant plant that became naturalized not by dominating, but by being useful. It fits into small, often disturbed places, coexisting with native species and even healing wounds. Its leaves are medicinal. This stands in contrast to invasive species that aggressively take over.
Ah, I see.
It beautifully illustrates contributing to community rather than dominating it, embodying a reciprocal healing relationship.
That's a wonderful organic analogy, thinking of a plant that not only integrates but actively heals. It brings us back to Eckhart Tolle's profound concept of unity from A New Earth. You and life are not two, but one. When we truly overcome the ego-driven mindset, when we transcend that buffered self, we begin to realize our deep, undeniable interconnectedness. This realization is absolutely fundamental to living a committed life service within a community. It's a profound recognition that our individual well-being is intrinsically and inextricably linked to the well-being of others, and indeed of the entire living system around us.
And this profound connection, this porousness, contrasts sharply with the buffered self that Charles Taylor describes. Remember that?
Yes, the walled-off self.
Right. The modern buffered self is designed to be disengaged from the external world, primarily seeking meaning internally within its own subjective experience. This fosters what Taylor critiques as ersatz community, a kind of superficial, manufactured community based on fleeting or synthesized feelings, rather than a bond of deep mutual commitment and the shared life that defines genuine community.
So fake community versus real connection.
Pretty much. True, deep community, then, requires us to be porous, open, vulnerable, and actively engaged with the natural and social world, participating in a shared purpose.
That's a really clear way to put it. It's not just about feeling good with others, but being deeply, fundamentally connected to others in a meaningful, often challenging way. And modern research even sheds light on how we can actively restore this capacity for deep connection, particularly for those who have been deeply wounded. Bessel van der Kolk, in The Body Keeps the Score, discusses compelling research into MDMA-assisted therapy for trauma treatment. He highlights its ability to decrease fear and defensiveness, while significantly increasing compassionate energy, curiosity, clarity, confidence, creativity, and connectedness.
Wow. That's fascinating. It represents a cutting-edge scientific exploration of how to restore the very capacity for deep connection that is so essential for community, particularly for those whose ability to connect has been fractured by severe trauma. It underscores the profound biological and psychological underpinnings of our innate human need for and ability to engage in meaningful community. And throughout history, we see powerful examples of this commitment to community through direct, compassionate acts of service. The Gospels, for instance, describe the acts of Jesus.
The miracle.
Well, yes, but think about what they were. The blind seeing, the lame walking, lepers being cleansed, the deaf hearing, the dead being raised, and the poor having good news preached to them. These are not merely miracles in the abstract, but tangible, profound acts of service that alleviate suffering and restore dignity within the community.
These are direct, compassionate acts of service to the marginalized, defining a profound commitment to the community's well-being, an embodiment of the second mountain. Black Elk, in Black Elk Speaks, also powerfully embodies this.
Yes, his vision.
His great vision was a cosmic one.
Quote,
To save the nation's hoop and make the holy tree to bloom in the center of it. A vision for the flourishing of his entire Lakota people. Even later, when the sacred hoop was broken by the arrival of the white settlers, he still sought ways to help his people, even joining a big show to learn Wasichu's secrets, the white man's ways.
Hmm.
This exemplifies a lifelong, unwavering commitment to his community's well-being and cultural preservation, constantly seeking understanding and pathways to uplift his people, even in the face of immense adversity.
But if we fail to make these commitments, if we retreat into isolation and prioritize collective self-interest over shared flourishing, the dangers become stark and, well, existential. Revisit Teilhard de Chardin's warning. If we pursue fulfillment in isolation, mankind would in this case culminate in a dust of active dissociated particles.
Fragments.
Exactly. He contrasts this with genuine human growth, which should be towards the aggregation in a single block of a mankind whose fragments weld together and interpenetrate. Isolation is not just an individual plight, it is a collective threat to the very fabric of humanity.
That's a powerful and almost terrifying vision if we don't connect and evolve collectively. Conversations with God suggest humanity is only on the 12-yard line of evolution, metaphorically speaking.
Only the 12-yard line.
Yeah, with our technological prowess threatening to outstrip your ability to use it wisely. It emphasizes an urgent call for a massive shift in consciousness, a renewed respect for all of life, and a deepened understanding of the interrelatedness of everything. This frames societal change itself, this collective evolution towards wisdom and connection, as a monumental second mountain for all of humanity.
This call for a fundamental global shift also extends to our economic systems. Jason Hickel, in Less is More, offers a potent critique of capitalism as a system organized around perpetual growth,
Endless growth.
a relentless drive that takes more than it gives back. He argues this inherent design inevitably leads to overshooting planetary boundaries, even with the best intentions of clean energy.
Because the growth imperative remains.
Exactly. This highlights the urgent need for a fundamental shift in our collective vocation, from limitless extraction and accumulation to a sustainable reciprocal relationship with the planet and its resources. It's a planetary second mountain, demanding a deep commitment to the community of all life.
That's a truly sobering thought, that even our proposed solutions can perpetuate the problem if the underlying mindset of infinite growth doesn't fundamentally change. And tragically, human history is replete with stark failures in building true community. Yuval Noah Harari, in *Sapiens*, observes that Homo sapiens might have wiped out Neanderthals not because they were utterly alien, but because they were too familiar to ignore but too different to tolerate.
Chilling.
It is. This observation reveals a deep-seated human tendency for intolerance, for hostility towards those who are other but too close for comfort, an impulse that profoundly hinders the formation of true, inclusive community.
And Steven Pinker's historical overview of genocides and the better angels of our nature further underscores this grim reality. He notes that these atrocities emerge from toxic reactions among human nature, including essentialism, moralization, and intuitive economics, coupled with opportunities for unscrupulous leaders. This cycle of violence and intolerance stands in stark, tragic contrast to the ideal of community commitment and service. It demonstrates the profound challenges inherent in building a truly interconnected, compassionate, and flourishing world. These are the stakes, really, of failing to ascend the second mountain collectively.
Wow. So what does this all mean for us personally and maybe for humanity? We've journeyed from the self-centered ambition and inherent fragility of the first mountain, exploring the internal obstacles that often keep us stuck there. We've seen how transformative turning points, whether it's Siddhartha's renunciation or Baldwin's disillusionment, can awaken profound call to deeper commitment. And then we've thoroughly climbed the second mountain, examining the 4 great commitments to a spouse and family, a vocation, a philosophy or faith, and a community.
Right.
And how each, in its own challenging way, contributes to a richer, more meaningful existence, one built on giving rather than taking.
The path of the second mountain is fundamentally about transcending the ego, embracing profound vulnerability, and finding true, enduring joy, not in individual gain or fleeting pleasure, but really in giving oneself away in love and service. It's a continuous journey of growth, conscious choice, and unwavering recommitment, often through great difficulty.
It's not easy.
Definitely not. As we've seen, the challenges are immense, both individually and collectively, but the potential for a truly flourishing life and a more just, interconnected society lies squarely in this ongoing, courageous ascent.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for you listening right now. If, as Seneca wisely wrote, True victory is the triumph over oneself, and he will live badly who does not know how to die well, meaning letting go of the old self. What small, everyday act of letting go of self-will and embracing a deeper commitment can you choose to practice, starting today, to begin or further your ascent of the second mountain? Perhaps it's a moment of truly selfless listening, or a small act of kindness in your community, or maybe simply a deeper reflection on your true purpose. What's one step you can take on your second mountain?